Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Indie Hour. It is episode 9, and if it's your first time joining us, this is a show where the patrons get to pick a independently published or small press game, and I will pair it with an appropriate game for a similar model collection so that you can get a look at what's out there in the tabletop world that you might not see. So we cover small press games, independent content creators, and even like free-to-play games all over. They're picked by patrons, and then like a fine, I don't know, like basement dwelling weed dealer, I will pair it with something appropriate to enhance your experience. In the chat, which you can see over here, is a lot of my patrons. This is recorded live before our patron audience. And we usually have like a before and after garbage time where I check in with everybody, see how they're doing, talk about why I got picked, what we could do in the future. And we generally just collab on this series. So if you're seeing this live on YouTube and not through Patreon, then you are at, I guess, a week late to the recording. We record this live. A week later, it goes up on the YouTube channel. And then we are recording at the same time simultaneously next week's on Patreon. So if you are watching this live right now, you could get in on a recording if you go and jump on Patreon, and you can see what everybody voted for. Every week I put up about 20-ish games. The previous week, we have new suggestions added as well, and there's like a brain trust of everybody who is a GMG patron selecting and finding stuff so that we can kind of just bring it more to light. And that is sort of the mission of GMG, right? We are trying to, I guess, as a community, bring more light and exposure to small press, independent content, and boutique businesses, because there's a lot of cool stuff out there that you can use your existing model collection for, your existing game collection for, and that your friends might find to be a blast if you are getting bored with the mainstream games that you are playing. So let's check in with the chat, see how everybody's doing, and see who's here. We've got Malev the Shinobi here, Zug's here, Ryan Dunphy's here, Mats Olson's here, Atragon X is here, and a bunch of other people who the chat has run away with up top. T-Bird's here, I know, as well. But I'll check in with everybody as Captain Ferrite's here. We'll check in with everybody as we're here. I think there's about almost 20 people live right now in the audience. And this happens every Wednesday, if you're watching this on a Wednesday. So today's choice, this is a classic, and I'm actually really excited about this one, because it is something that has been around for a long time and is expansive, is 7TV. I have paired that with Planet Smasher Games, my friend Mike Hutchinson's company, Perilous Tales, and these are pulp miniature games. So they are storytelling games. They are not competitive games, but they're designed to show you like an episode of television, basically, or an old pulp serial novel. 7TV in particular has been on for a long time, almost since I discovered indie gaming, right? Because like most of you in the 80s and 90s, I discovered miniature wargaming. I discovered miniature wargaming in the back of fighting fantasy books, which were choose your own adventure novels. Like they were what you did before video games, where you used your hands to flip between pages in a book. And fighting fantasy was actually a book series that was written by the founders of Games Workshop, Ian Livingston and Steve Jackson, so it had ads for Citadel miniatures in the back. But then later on, through the magic of message boards, which is another dead topic, which is aging me, I discovered things like the Let Adventure forum, Tabletop Gaming News, back then the TGN forums. We had the mini forums? There's a bunch of different forums where you could find this independent stuff, and people were sharing what they were doing. A lot of convention games, and 7TV was one of them. So if you look here, Crooked Dice Miniatures makes these rule sets, and they go along with their actual miniatures. These are all based upon various pulp things that you would probably love. So having things like a Basement Beast, a Child of Yog Sothoth for Lovecraft, an Electron Gladiator, looks a lot like he might be named Tron. Fishmen. There is a gajillion things you can do here, from Cold War criminals, Law and Order, like weird martial artists, military forces, minions, Weird War, adventure stuff like the arcade, Granville Pulp, Saturday morning cartoons is one of my favorite ones. I don't know if you noticed, but there's some turtles in there. Heroes in a Half Shell in this one, is along with a Rocksteady and a Bebop, creepy clowns. dastardly drivers. Like, where else are you going to find Cobra Troopers, wacky racers, dudes? This miniature, fucking Snarf is here, and Lion-O. Like, these are slightly legally distinct, fun parody miniatures from a variety of different IPs. Yeah, we did just see Jay. When you're watching this later on, I don't know if you know that, but that is absolutely a Thundar right there. Atomic Age Savage, with his sun sword. Yeah, that's exactly what you think it is. That is absolutely Panthros and Battle Tank. The miniatures in here are fantastic. And that is what 7TV is all about, right? It's about creating games where you could put these miniatures on the table and actually play like a game. You could play an episode of a Saturday morning cartoon. You could play an episode of your favorite TV show. And the miniature ranges are designed to go along with that. You have things like fantasy adventurers. These might look a little familiar. There might be a dude with 11 fingers in here somewhere. This is one of my favorites actually right here is, a certain Lawless Lucy is hanging out over here with her sword. I just want, if there's a Joxer the Mighty miniature, we might stop this whole live stream for me to buy a Joxer the Mighty because he's very tidy. And yeah, and you can probably find a miniature for your favorite thing in here somewhere. Paranormal Exterminators. Like, did you know that you could buy these? The friggin' Stranger Things kids even, right? You got like all of your favorite TV shows have some kind of a cool miniature that you can play with. And that's what the rule sets are for. So you can see there's a variety of rule sets, but what we're going to focus on today is the core rulebook. It's available here on the Crooked Dice site, or you can also get it through Wargames Vault, which is where I picked it up today. I find Wargames Vault to be convenient, obviously, one, because I publish through it, but two, because it keeps everything in one space. So if you have an account on Wargames Vault, your library is always there. So if you lose a PDF or whatever, you can always go back and rebuy it. And it also will update the PDFs as the creators update them. You get an email usually of like, hey, this game got changed and updated or whatever. But yeah, there are rules for all kinds of things. Like you can go to, there's an 80s genre guide for war games, right? Like, and it'll add additional cards and, like game accessories for you to play through it. Here's another one, like, the 7T feed genre fantasy guide for playing fantasy games, taking you through your favorite Rutger Hauer movies. Yeah, if you wanted to play like a Lady Hawk, you know what I mean? Episode of something. I think that's actually a picture of Rutger Hauer there, isn't it? I freaking love 7TV. Yeah, that's a Rutger Hauer. There you go. A cybernetic, a Roy Batty miniature, a bold like in what other world would there be a Roy Batty and a Hans Gruber miniature or a picture in a rulebook? A friggin' Purple Rain miniature. And these will give you sort of like some generic guidelines for playing with this core rule set, which we're going to look at right now. So that's what I downloaded today. The core rulebook is a basically like a jumping off point for all these other expansions. And we could spend weeks just talking about 7TV's various expansions, but sort of short story long as I do this introduction, you can find a genre setting for the episode of TV that you want to set up and play. And it's designed to be a director and players playing through whatever that scenario is. And this will let you jump off for all of it. So you can see here, like everything from Bond on the cover, Flash Gordon, I think that's the Shadow, like a female presenting the Shadow. And this is the 2023 edition of it. And it has a huge, at this point, after all the years that's been going, it has a huge working staff, right? So the development teams, Glenn Allen, Claire Bolton, Connor Dwyer, Helena Nash, Morgan Nash, Peter Wright, and these are all, I'm sure, friends. And we've got lead designer Carl Perton, who's put all this together, doing the graphic design and stuff as well. Some fantastic painters on here too, like Kev Dallimore. He's also done some of the photography. John Adder, Mark Dixon, Callum France, Mystic Spirals, Andrew Taylor, and Simon Bradley. And this is dedicated to Peter Wright, a good friend and a terrible influence, as all of us need in our gaming life. And so, yeah, and obviously tons of people in here that I didn't mention, but credit on screen for all of them as well, because if I go through all these names, it's going to take forever. So, yeah, what is 7TV? I've kind of already hit on that. It's trying to make an episode of your favorite media, you know what I mean, as a miniature game. What is it behind the scenes? What's in this rulebook when we need to play? The rulebook's laid out through cast creation. I really like the temporal layout of this book. I've talked about this before in rulebook layout, where it presents you the stuff in the order you would need to do it in. So I think build, paint, play is a really good order for stuff. So it doesn't get to the rules of the game. It starts with creating your cast of like, who do you need? Who's going to be in the scene? Who's going to be in the episode that you're filming? Are you a hero or a villain? How big is your size of your cast? What's the mix of like the characters and stuff like that? And then it goes through like the basics of like what a unit is. So it doesn't get into how you interact with the table until you actually get to setting up the table. And this is a thing that I really enjoy in rulebook writing these days, where it starts with like collecting the physical miniatures and assembling the cast. Then it goes into how to play the game and then what you're playing for at the end. The rulebook itself is broken into, I think, just over 100 and almost 200 pages. Yeah, almost 300 pages actually. That's like the appendices and stuff like that. So it is a fairly lengthy rulebook. You can buy a print copy of this, I believe, as well on the 7TV website. So if you go to the core rulebook, I think it's $65 Canadian, but you can get a physical copy as well. So I got the digital here, but if you're for some people for longer rulebooks, I think it's a little less convenient to do a digital rulebook. They like to have a physical rulebook. It's easier to flip through, but you can get either one here. And we're not going to go through all 300 pages. That would be way too much. I'm going to go through the how to make a cast, some core rule mechanics, and then how to set up a scene. We're not going to do all the individual units. We'd be here for friggin' hours. This is a giant game. I'm here to give you the Cole's Notes version. So like I said, it's a miniature skirmish game. It's also a meta game. It's not like other war games. So you're not about fighting battles. You're directing action set pieces, right? You're trying to do a scene from a TV show. And it's a celebration of cult TV and film. And here's some of the genres you can get into. 7TV Inch High Spy-Fi is a 1960s and 70s spy show. 7TV Apocalypse, so like zombies, survivors, mutants, giant ants. 7TV Pulp, so like the 30s and 40s Indiana Jones style action adventure. 7TV Fantasy, so things like Excalibur, Lady Hawk, Lord of the Rings. And then 80s TV. So that could be everything from cartoons to the A-Team to G.I. Joe, to, what's the crime show that I really liked? Hunter, the one where he destroys a car every single episode. If you don't remember Hunter, it's one of my all-time favorite TV shows. It's a procedural cop show that like this guy should be fired every time he goes to work because he destroys another beat up shitbox every single time. And so about this rulebook. So if you're new to it, some common terms. The models that comprise your side are called the cast. So like the ones you're actually playing with the cast. You have stars, co-stars, and extras. And it's kind of just like a 3-layered term of like how heroic are you. The stars are the ones that they have the plot armor. Co-stars are the ones that are like minor characters, but they might get beat up. And then the extras are the ones that may be disposable. In Star Trek terms, they would be wearing red shirts. Your cast's members are always allies and allies, and then the enemy and enemies for your opponents. Any abilities your models possess are those special effects. Stars and co-stars have unique special effects called star qualities. The relative value of your model is called your rating. That's how you kind of build a cast and also build the enemies. The game you play are in episodes, and the action takes place during a scene. The player who's taking the current turn is on screen, and then the currency of the game is plot points. So how many plot points do you hit? Statuses can be received from attacks, special effects, or star qualities, and even environmental hazards. What do you need? A pack or two of some playing cards. I think you can buy nice like printed cards too. 3 more 6-sided dice, around 20 counters like coins and beads for like status effects. A tape measure that's needed to measure range, and finally some suitable models and a willing opponent. Profile cards using this rulebook are free downloads on the website or purchased as a printable deck. Yeah, there's nice cards too, I thought. And then tokens and templates. They use sort of the old GW templates here. So you need 20 plot point counters and 3 6-sided dice, a status and objective token, barrier, beam, blast, 3-inch, blast, 5-inch, and teardrop templates. So the 3, 5, and teardrop are basically the old GW ones. So you can just use those if you have them. They're the current Horus Heresy and Warhammer the Old World templates too. So if you want to find them contemporarily, you can buy them that way. And 2 Steal the Scene tokens. Accessories. An accessory pack that includes a deluxe set of printed cards is also available, and it has 39 script cards, 10 prop, and 10 MacGuffin cards for like doing the scene, 6 genre cards, 4 grimoires, and that's the basis of like what you would need to play. So there's some like accessory stuff, but again, it's all free if you just want to print it. You can buy nice copies too. What's different in this rulebook from the old stuff? So the script deck and script phase, the maximum length of a game of 7 TV is determined by a deck of cards. The deck has been known as different names, the countdown deck, the cliffhanger deck, etc., etc. In different versions of the game, genre guides will continue to use bespoke terms to do this, but the script deck is basically the new standard. Props. The co-stars, stars, and extras in the game of 7TB are buffed by a deck of special cards. These are various termed gadgets, gear, and artifacts. Genre guides like the 80s one, 70s one, spy one, apocalypse one will give you special ones to use. And then action symbols are used to identify the type of action each star quality and special effect requires. So like they've broken the game down into how stuff is working. And then the last thing is this edition of the game adds genre, and that's why there's a core rulebook, and then the sort of like overlay of the time period and like when you're playing is the genre that goes on top of it. So let's talk about collecting some miniatures. Now, the great thing about this game is you might already have a genre you want to play in, and like you could absolutely use these rules with like Warhammer miniatures, Infinity miniatures, like current pop culture miniatures to simply do a highly narrative game set in that world, right? Like if you had a collection, like say you wanted to use the fantasy expansion and set it in like Warhammer Cursed City, that you have everything you need basically to do that with that collection of miniatures already. Just overlay this book, use the fantasy layer, build your cast. And you're going to start off with your miniatures first. So you just pick miniatures you like that are supposed to be in the cast of the TV show. Then pick a story you want to do. And then the idea here is that you're going to experience the cinema of that story. Every time I get distracted, I forgot there's a Raiden in this rulebook from Big Trouble in Little China. And then you have your level of stars based upon the miniatures that you picked. And then first, are you a hero or a villain? If you choose a heroic cast, then all your stars, co-stars, and extras must be heroic or neutral because there's templates for your stars. If you choose a villainous cast, then all of your stars, co-stars, and extras must be villainous or neutral. And then if you choose a neutral cast, then everybody must be neutral, but extras can be from any affiliation because they'll show up. It's possible to have two heroic or two villainous casts facing off against each other. Perhaps they are warring fantasy cultures or city-states. Anything's possible, basically, and you depend upon what you decide they want to be. And then you choose a genre. So action, adventure, or fantasy. These could all be the genre that you want to play in, and they'd be your overlays. Alternate history, horror, or sci-fi. And then you decide your ratings. So a cast size. When you're learning the game, you probably want to start with a starter cast. It's 20 to 30 ratings of characters. A basic cast would be 40 to 50 for like an average game, and a large cast would be 50 or more. And then the larger ratings, like 75 to 100, is like that would be like a participation game. You'd play that like an event with a whole bunch of people. The feature packs add your overlay of what you can take, and then your cast mix is going to be all the different types of profiles. You want at least probably one of each if you can, having a star, co-star, and an extra, because it's going to make the story more interesting when someone's got plot armor, someone doesn't, right, as you play through. And then while extras aren't explicitly in categories, they can be grouped into three broad categories: background talent. So the rank and file, like Transporter Chief O'Brien on Star Trek, would start off as background talent. Bit players, higher rated combatants with more varied and improved attacks and tailored special effects, like a mercenary, ninja, or a sharpshooter. So like you come into a scene and there's like a SWAT commander basically giving orders in like a cop procedural. That SWAT commander might be the bit player. And then supporting actors are an eclectic mix of profiles that vary in cost and ability and are often limited to specific genres. So for instance, in Ghostbusters, Janine would be like supporting actor, right? She's not in a ton of scenes, but like everybody remembers Janine answering the phone being Ghostbusters, what do you want? And that's kind of how you have to broadly categorize them in your mind. So now we're going to go to the anatomy of a card. So first is your profile name. So who they are. So like a secret agent would be a heroic star there. We got our bond. We have the profile type. So if they're a star, a co-star, an extra, that's the thing under their name. So this little like tab right here. A daring rebel would be like a heroic co-star. So that would be like the sidekick to Flash Gordon. Their ratings. So this is like the number of points sort of that they are to determine your cast size. So like your secret agent's 10. So if you're doing a starter thing, 25, you've already spent like, 2/5 of your point value on just that guy, which you can kind of get the model count from that. You're in about 3 models in the game. Your stats: fight, shoot, body, mind, and spirit. I think you get the idea of what that's for. So like fighting, punching, shooting, guns, mind, your ability to solve problems, body, how much damage you can take, spirit, it's like a supernatural thing. And then defense is your target number typically to be hit. So like if someone was going to be rolling against defense of 10, you'd roll dice, add your fight, try and hit a 10. Then we've got additional statistics that you can do. And a stat of 0 means doesn't apply. I should mention that too. If you have a stat of 0, you typically can't do that action. There's also vehicles like machines that can be capacity, how many people can be in them, speed, how fast they move, defense, which is your handling, size, and toughness, and then armor, which is how much it can like absorb damage. Attacks will have a classification with a symbol. So if it's a fight, shoot, or presence, it's what is the stat that you're going to be fighting on. So for instance, on our secret agent here, he has a nerve pinch with a range of 0 inches. It's a strike +9. The effect is you get the stunned status, basically. An explosive gadget, like his watch blows up. It's an 8-inch range, +7 to his strike. It's spray, 0 health on fire. So you don't do any damage, but you will be on fire. And silenced pistol, it's 10-inch range, +8 to hit, and -1 to your health if you get hit. Health is at the bottom here. So for instance, this guy's health is 3, the secret agent. He can take 3 strikes before he's disabled. And a suave comment can also be done to gain the distracted presence, or the distracted ability. And then at the bottom, you'll also have action symbols and special effects. A model can perform all kinds of cinematic effects during a scene. Some provide special benefits to a game. So always study your profile special effects to gain some advantages. And all of these cards are going to be at the back here. So once you skip to the very end, and this is a giant PDF, so it's going to take a little while to load, because of course it does. And I'm going to go back to 27. But you can see there's a huge like library basically of these cards to look through. So everything from like the chopper, with like a vehicle type, to the different extras, heroic co-stars, and stars that you can take. And that library is also going to be added to every time you pick like a genre book, because there will be extra ones that like fit that genre. So like a teenage mutant could be in there, for instance, as a type of genre that you could play through. And oh my God, it's chugging on this PDF. I forgot how big this PDF. Chrome is like, no, please stop. Oh, I hate this is happening. I shouldn't have tried to skip ahead. Let's just reload it. Let's just reload the whole damn thing. And that way it won't chug anymore. This is the problem with 300-page PDFs. They do take a while to load. All right. Come on now. I'm dead sticking this thing right now. All right, here we go. Load that, please and thank you. All right, there we go. We're back. So yeah, it's just, they just chugged. So some examples of profiles, and their ratings. It's like a sort of like generic sort of like list. So if you were a bold blade, you know what I mean? You could be a barbarian adventurer, a ray gun rocketeer, an outlaw archer, genres that would be applicable with things like action, fantasy, and historical. And then your rating would be 10. So these are some of your stars. Mysterious stranger. That could be a Doctor Who type, a secret agent, like a 007, a lovable scoundrel. You could be a scruffy nerf herder even. Or an innocent soul, someone that's getting caught up in adventure and a call to action. I love this Furiosa miniature, by the way. A daring rebel, an everyman, a final girl, a lone survival, a loyal sidekick. These are examples of like co-stars and their ratings. And then villainous stars and co-stars. A dark shadow. We've got our Pennywise over here, a sadistic slasher, a warmonger, a kingpin. So you can even play as if you wanted to be like an Immortan Joe type, or a blaster from Master Blaster. I love some of these miniatures. Every time I get the reference, I'm like, yeah, I understood that reference. Red Right Hand, that's a Nick Cave reference, by the way. If you didn't get that, that is maybe my favorite reference in this book, that someone could be a Red Right Hand. He's got, that's, what's the line? Designed and directed by his Red Right Hand. And then we got our extras: alien invaders, assassins, cops, cultists. These are like the side casts that could be in here. And there are a ton of them. So like when you're picking your model collection, you're going to find something in here that is appropriate for what you want to do. And then you can customize them. So whenever you have a star or co-star as a template, you take their template card, you can also adjust their stats. So if you want to, their rating will go up and down to fill out that 25 points. If you don't get quite there, you might have a few rating points left over. You then add and subtract to get the value that you want to have. Change their genres, swap a listed genre for up their rating. So like that's kind of the out of time effect. Think of that as being like the I want Ash from Army of Darkness. He does not fit. He's a post-apocalyptic survivor, basically, from a horror movie. He doesn't fit in a medieval fantasy world, so I'm going to have his technology and stuff there. It means that I have certain advantages that don't fit the world. I'm going to up his rating to do so. And then buy special effects, which are things that you can do, like give somebody magic. A John Constantine, who might be like a lovable rogue. If you're going to do like Constantine, you can give him magic, right? So he's a lovable rogue. He does not normally magical. You could buy him magic user X, and every level would cost you 2 rating to make that character that way. So that's kind of the nice thing about this game is whatever your miniature is, whatever the genre you're trying to portray, you can also tweak these template cards to make them fit what you have. And then these are the action symbols at the bottom of things you can do. So things like free actions are F, a passive action, which kind of happens all the time, a special action you have to buy, a 1 is a 1 use per turn, and then some of these will cost you plot points where you're going to accumulate plot points by doing the mission, and then you're unlocking the ability to do these abilities. So like Brave is passive. This model never received the scared status. This model will always strike at +1 against enemies with scared status weapon effects. So like they don't like bullies. Break in. This model can move through doors and windows in base contact. Place this model on the other side of the door or window. It can ignore obstacles. And these will all be on like your card typically if you have access to them. Camouflage. If you want, George Papard to dress like a giant pineapple, while using camouflage, this model can move through other models, but it costs you a plot point and it's passive. So you can camouflage up, but you have to be part of the way through and use your plot points. And there is a ton of these. It's funny because I think this is the first time we've done a game this dense. And like there's so much customization because you have such a low model count. You can do a lot to your miniatures here. You can adjust your attacks, so like the weapon loadouts that are on those cards. You can change them up. You can swap up to 1 attack for another attack of the same type. Add up to 1 new attack from the attack tables below. So you can swap what you have, and then you can see the attack tables here will add like melee attacks. So like having an axe or a bow staff or a garrote or handcuffs or a katana, shooting attacks, things like ray guns, shotguns, slings, torch, spears, whatever you want it to be. Oh my God, look at these Moonraker bad guys. Actually, those aren't Moonraker bad guys, although they look kind of like Moonraker bad guys. I'm missing what those are actually supposed to be. Those are definitely V bad guys, though. And then we have our little fellowshipy dwarf, or actually, this is Hobbit dwarves. We have our Gandalf and our Bilbo, and our Bjorn the Bear Man. There he is. I knew there was going to be a George Papard miniature in here somewhere. We have the A-Team. and like they have their names even. Grizzled Veteran for George Papard, Lovable Scoundrel for Face, Mercenary for B.A. Baracus, and then Mad Murdoch is the comic relief, which is fantastic. Some Lovecraftian horror here too in the color section. This book is, if you have the print copy of this book, it's worth it just for the art and the photography. Dallimore, Kev did a great job on this. All right, so we're finally into how to play, and we're going to wrap it after this section so you can have a basic understanding of how the game itself works. The basics, obviously, just have fun. This is not a competitive war game. For sides and players, if you're not sure of a rule, 70 works with 2 sides or casts fighting each other. So you want to have heroes and villains or even heroes and heroes going at it. And typically when you pick your genre, you and your friend, or if you're just, this is also the kind of game where like the director, the guy who sets up the game, might make a game for their friends. You can very easily then have the 2 opposed casts just be the 2 people in the theme that you want. Like you could have the Thing and you could have the scientists at, North 31. There's a lot of ways that you can parse this, but you typically want to have 2 players. There are rules for playing with 1 player and having either the director play or having some like basic AI stuff. Size of your playing area, roughly 3 feet. That's what you want to have. You can play smaller games on a smaller surface. So like the starter game, you might play on like a 2x2. And the length of the game, it's around 45 minutes on a 2x2 to an hour. Narratives would be 40 plus, be a couple hours, and large casts would be like 2 or more hours. Base sizes, generally, they give you some examples, but you don't need to follow them. Just use what your model collection has. And then dice rolls. There are simple rolls and stretch rolls. So in a simple roll, you roll a d6. 1 die would be 1d6. 3 would be like 3d6 added together. 2d6 plus 1 means roll 2 and then add 1. And then stretch rolls. In other circumstances, you'll start with 1 dice, but you may add extra dice to a roll. This is known as a stretch roll. If it's used, you should use the highest dice rolled from the basic result and then add any modifiers. So in a simple roll, you're just rolling all the dice and adding together. In a stretch roll, you're rolling a pool and picking the best result. And if there's a modifier, you add it after that. And then you get the +1 for every remaining dice of 4, 5, or 6. So I roll 7d6. I get a 6, and then I get 3 more dice that are 4 or higher, I'm going to be 6 plus 4 is a total of 10 for that stretch roll. Disadvantage, when a dice roll is described as disadvantage, you roll the initial 1 dice, but cannot add stretch dice for any reason. Reroll, if you reroll any dice, you must accept the second roll. And that's the basics for rolls. And then stat tests. Sometimes a model will have to make a stat test to assess the performance. You have your stat value and then your target number. This is passed for each stretch roll equals or exceeds the target number in the stat test. If you pass a stat test with a statistic of 1, you need to add at least 1 stretch dice. Initiative, strike, and defense rolls are not stat tests. Opposed stat tests, sometimes 2 models will be trying to struggle with wits, dexterity, or good old brawn. When a rule calls for this, both models will make stretch goals. The model with the highest total has won the contest. Ties should be rerolled until there's a winner, and some tussles are hard won. So it would be like the locking hands and wrestling kind of moment. God, look at the blending on that. Ugh. I think that's a Kev Dallimore. Maybe. I don't know. The photography definitely is. And then plot points. There are the lifeblood of 7TV. How to generate plot points. Plot points are generated each turn according to the models you have in play at the time. Models in play if they are on the playing area and acting on your side. So plot points generated various times. So in the initiative roll, +1 for each side when you tie, +2 to the side that loses the initiative roll. So if you don't get to go first, you do get 2 plot points. Script phase. 2 to the side on screen if the face down card is a finale card, 2 to each side if you choose to turn over 2 cards. And then action phase, you get half a plot point for each extra in your cast, 1 for each co-star, 2 for each star, and 1 equal to the starting health value of a star co-star when you're reduced to 0 health and remove them from play. So when you're on the line, when you start to lose stars and co-stars, you actually get more plot points to kind of compensate for it. And then what do? You can use them to activate your models, enhance your combat, power some special effects and props, and remove debilitating statuses. So generating plot points is almost like generating orders in a game of Infinity, and you'll spend them to do things on your miniatures. So there isn't like a basic action economy in the game. The action economy kind of goes up and down in a pool of plot points, kind of like generating your order pool in a game like Infinity, based upon your current situation in the game. And as you lose models, like I said earlier, you'll gain more plot points. As you become disadvantaged, you might have more plot points later on to kind of balance out getting to go first. And that's what you need the counters for. And then playing a game. So prologue, decide the type of episode you're going to play. So like it could be like, let's take the Dracula thing on screen here, for example. It could be that you're going to investigate the wreck of the Demeter, right? On the shore, basically, as it arrives, and Dracula arrives in England at Carfax Alley. Carfax Abbey. Before that, it could be, you know what I mean? You're arriving. It's the arrival in Transylvania by our like protagonist. Real estate agent trying to sell them Carfax Abbey, and they have to infiltrate the castle. Like you could have any of these be your prologue or your scene. Then the cameras roll, and you get your script phase, action phase, and end phase. Script phase obviously is going to be when you figure out what you're doing. Action phase is when you're activating your models, and the end phase is when you reset. So set up your game. Determine the episode, determine the attacker and the defender, determine any tropes that are optional, place your objective tokens, place the MacGuffin if there is one, determine your starting locations, place your models in order, create the script deck, and that's your deck of cards, regular playing cards. Create each player's prop store, and roll for initiative. You can also determine random episodes like a battle, an escape, a race, a raid, a rescue, or theft. These are 6 generic episodes. There's more available in your themes. Determine the attacker and defender. Both players roll off and add the highest mind stat of any model in the cast, right? So if Data's there, then he's going to be smarter than some random Rogbelin. The player with the highest result can choose to be the attacker or the defender. The most important is where it might influence where your cast is starting on the table and where they're deployed. Determine any tropes. These are entirely optional typically, but they'll work in all 6 episodes. There'll be different ones. And then place your objectives, the things you're trying to touch and do. Collect objective tokens. Any model can collect objective tokens. When a model comes to base contact, they can pick them up. Any star and co-star that claims an objective token will get 2 plot points immediately for their side. And then place the MacGuffin, like an alien meteorite, a holy grail, or a Xeno egg. Any episode can feature a MacGuffin, the item whose plot points it centers around. So I do love that these miniatures are all from different movies. Determine your deployment, place your models, and then start playing the game. So create the script deck. On page 74, you'll see how to create the script deck, which will be used. And then you have your Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 script deck. Place the deck somewhere within reach of both players. These are like the turn limits, basically, for each of the acts. And then when you reach the finale, the game's about to end. create your prop store. These are things that, based on your theme and stuff, you might have as available, like a DeLorean that shows up or the phone booth. Each star or co-star you have in the cast adds one prop card to the prop store. Each model with the prop special effect adds a prop card to the prop store. Also check cast members for any additional special effects to give you bonus prop cards. Roll for initiative, like we said before, adding the mind roll, and gain your plot points. And then turns and phases. So turns. In one turn, only a single player gets to act. The player taking the turn is on screen. The on-screen player completes phases 1 to 3 of their turn. So script phase, action phase, and end phase. Once both of those are done, then the turn's over. In the script phase, it indicates how much time is left to play at the scene. The player will turn over 1 or 2 script cards from the script deck and play a single card. In effect, the script deck works as a countdown mechanic in terms of length of the game. The player can accelerate the game by turning. So if you're winning, you might want to go faster and turn over 2 cards. Turning over 2 cards can earn you additional plot points. However, this means players will be able to activate more models and make their models' actions more effective. So if I'm speeding the game up, you're going to get more plot points to be able to do things. The script deck has 3 parts, mirroring the 3 acts that constitute most films and TV episodes. Players will work their way through the deck until it's exhausted. At this point, the scene will end. The 3 parts, the order in which the deck is arranged in is Act 1. You focus on moving your cast into position. These cards mainly deal with movement and other incremental events. Act 2, in the second act, the action begins to heat up. Cards from this act mainly to focus on attacking the opposing card. And then Act 3, the finale, then things are red hot. Anything can happen. You can move or fight. So the idea is that to prevent, like game mechanic wise, to prevent like alpha striking, all your Act 1 cards allow you to take actions that aren't necessarily to do with like removing other miniatures or fighting. Act 2, it's about the actual engagement of that happening. And then Act 3, it's everyone's game. So it's a neat balancing mechanic because it kind of slows down the initial like maneuvering section, and you can almost feel like time dilation, right? Like everything's kind of in slow motion in the beginning, and then it starts to speed up, and then it's all just like crashing together at the end of it all. And based upon your table size, you're going to have more or less cards. So you'll have 5 Act 1 cards, 5 Act 2 cards, and 5 finale cards for a total of 15 cards in a deck if you're playing on a 2x3 foot board. On a 4 foot board, it's 6, 6, and 6. And if you think about it, when you flip cards for your turn, divide that number in half. So a 15 turn deck is roughly 8 turns. 18 would be 9 turns. But if you're flipping 2, you can speed it up as well and give your opponent more plot points. In the script deck of each phase, flip over 1 card and play the effect on the card. So it might have like a special effect on the side. Flipping 2 script cards. If 2 are flipped, then all sides immediately gain 2 plot points, and the player on screen plays the effect on the last card flipped. If the face down card is a red finale card, the side on screen immediately gains 2 plot points. Some script cards take effect immediately, while some remain in play for the whole turn. At the end of the turn, place the script cards in the discard pile. And you can print and play with these. There's genre symbols that are optional after the script card has been resolved. The on-screen player can choose to play a genre effect. That's if you're playing with like a genre, like apocalyptic or whatever. It's almost like in Ranges of Shadow Deep, when there's like an event table, when you flip something that has a genre thing on it, it's like, now it's time to unlock like the special thing that can happen. The thunderstorm starts, or the supply drop you were waiting for from like the military arrives, or whatever it ends up being. And then the final battle, if there's no cards remaining in the script deck after this effect on the final card has been resolved, the scene will conclude at the end of that turn. But you can also use playing cards for this. So clubs will always be Act 1, spades are Act 2, and diamonds are the finale. Follow the instructions on page 75 to tournament, and you've got if you don't want to print and play with the cards, you've got a table here of like what the effects would be. So for instance, in Act 1, if you flip a 10 of clubs, it's the cutting room forward. The first cup is the deepest. Place the blast 3-inch template anywhere in the playing area. Models touched by this template cannot activate this turn. So basically, like the camera shifts away from somebody and they don't get to act. Or 3 of clubs would be a set change. Mind your backs around the flats. Choose one item of scenery and move it D 3 inches, pushing any models clear of it by 2 inches. It could be that like you're on a ship and like it tips and a bunch of stuff rolls around. Like you have a whole bunch of different like effects that can take off. So in Act 2, there could be things like an action sequence, a flurry of fists, blades, explosions, and dramatic deaths. Choose D3 allies not in base contact with the enemies. Each chosen model can immediately make a shooting attack. Or a big break for the Queen of Spades. Will you be the next big thing? Choose 1 extra. This model can make 1 free strike immediately. If they fail, lose D3 plot points. So like you get a free punch. That's like when someone like it's when Benicio del Toro shows up in Miami Vice. You know what I mean? You're like, what is he doing here? Or Ed O'Neill shows up in Miami Vice. Miami Vice was insane. Miami Vice was Michael Mann, if you don't know who that was, a director who made Heat. There are so many actors in Miami Vice that you cannot believe are in there. It's insane. And then finale cards, you can flip things like the final reel, your time is nearly up. The pitcher needs to wrap. Each of your models can immediately make a free 2-inch move. Practical effects, if not all, it's not all green screen and CGI. Sometimes you need a real deal. All props are free. So you don't have to spend any plot points on prop cards to use until your cast is next on screen. And then Wilhelm Scream. If you don't know what the Wilhelm Scream is, that's a movie thing where they have that. It's used all over a million different pieces of movie and TV. Enemies are dispatched in style. Choose one of your models to make an immediate strike. If the striker was an enemy model, you gain 3 plot points to do stuff with. Yep, that's a Benedict Cumberbatch miniature. That's something you didn't know you needed, but now you do. And then let's talk about the action phase. So in the action phase, you generate plot points. The on-screen player gains a plot point according to the number of type of models that are in your cast. Also, if you want to tie the initiative roll, etc. Remove any debilitating statuses. At any point during their turn, a player can choose to remove a status from other models, and then activate models. Once on the on-screen side has generated their plot points, they can choose to activate a number of miniatures one at a time and spend a model's 2 actions. Once activated, each model has 2 actions, and the player can choose to use them to move or attack, or use the profile's abilities or cast props. And then plot points are done to do this. Like I said earlier, co-stars get you 1, stars get you 2. You get half 1 for each extra. And then how do the status effects affect plot points? You have ones that don't generate plot points for your capture, like if you're tied up or whatever. The less mobile you are, the less plot points generate. And then spending them. So it's 1 per model to activate a model. To buy stretch dice, you can add dice to a test with a plot point. You can use prop star quality or special effects with plot points, and you can remove statuses. So like, you can spend plot points to like break out of handcuffs, put yourself out if you're on fire, get rid of stunned, and you can do that at any time. So plot points are the currency by which you activate all your miniatures. And then finally attack them, take your 2 actions. Once plot points have been generated, the side on screen can choose to activate any number of models one at a time. Activating a model costs a plot point, which is returned to the unused plot point pile. Once they're activated, it can only make up to 2 actions. However, a model cannot activate it if it's already activated this turn. It's immobilized or stunned. It has the dominated status, like it's being mind controlled or something like that. And followers can't be leaders. If a model is activated for free through the special effect of the leader, it cannot use any special effects that would activate other models because they're not in charge. And then you can do move actions, strike actions, free actions, which don't cost actions. Passive actions are happening all the time. And then special actions are usually on your card. And here's a variety of their action costs. So like change your facing, cost an action, max per activation, you can do it twice. Charge, doesn't cost you anything. Model ends its first move action with a fight action or something for free. Climb, get knocked down, and get up. Strike, make a fight attack, a shoot attack, or a presence attack. Like wits, basically. Exit vehicle, stat checks, and then like you're spending action points to do all these things. It's core mechanics for moving. It's pretty basic. You do have a control zone that people can't enter into without be considering to being in combat. Free decks for charging. And this next section is just going to be all of the examples of like how you do what you do. But let's talk about making an attack. So when a model uses a strike action, choose one of the different type of attack actions, either fight, shoot, and presence. The procedure is the same for all of them. Models are restricted in the number and type of attacks they can use during their activation. You cannot make 2 fight attacks, 2 shoot attacks, or 2 presence attacks in a single activation, so you can't double down. Make a shoot attack and a fight attack with 1 activation. Make shoot attacks if they are in a fight attack range of somebody else, or make strike attacks if they're immobilized or stunned. When you do it, you choose a target, see if you have line of sight, determine the range, make a defense roll. The attacker makes a strike roll, and if the attacker is successful, determine the weapon's effects. Line of sight and targeting is pretty simple, pretty common. Can the model see the model? Bonuses and penalties for cover are being in the open. See if you're in range. You saw on the card, everything has a range. And then defense roll. So the defender would make the target number this way. So first you take your defense stat. So like when we take the James Bond character there, he had a defense out of 10. Add any modifiers, cover, whatever, plus an initial dice, and then you can buy stretch dice with plot points. So you're going to roll a d6, add the defense, add any modifiers you have for like your situation. And then if you want to spend plot points on additional dice, remember you take the highest, and every additional stretch dice of a 4+ will add again 1 to the total of the highest dice. And you roll to see what your final total is. All kinds of modifiers can attack that, and the attacker makes a strike roll. So first, your strike number, add this number to your dice roll when you make an attack. So like, for instance, I think his gun was +8. Add any modifiers for situation, like you aimed, and then a dice plus stretch rolls. And then once you've done the hit or not, right? I think it was -1 health for his gun. If you beat the roll that you're going to have, then, or the defense roll that you've established from the target, then you're going to do the effect of the dice, which would be -1 health. And that's it. That's how it works. Weapon effects are pretty simple. It has like a currency commodity inside of it, which I think is pretty cool. And that's kind of it. I'm not going to go too much further. There is an epilogue, which is the end of the episode, and that gives you potentially a how much did you win by? And there are some campaign rules in here for linking episodes together. So if you want to have like a narrative that threads between your different plots, there's some core rules for doing that too. But I think we're like way over time, right? This is the longest thing we've gone in a single game this whole time. Look how cool those are. The Triffids. Oh yeah, that's so awesome. But there are a ton of episodes for playing the different episodes, and they give you some generic ones here in the core rulebook for like an open play game. And then narrative episodes are where you do the director's cut stuff and you have all of your campaign stuff. But I think we're going to stop here because we're at 125 pages in. So not even half yet. I'm going to check in with the chat and see how everybody's doing. So Chris Gibson says, I used to love fighting fantasy. Yes, I think we all did. And then Captain Ferret says, message boards are old now. I used to access BBS boards over dial-up. I mean, that's the vintage that 7TV is, right? We're talking about a game from an era, where that's where this kind of idea spawned, and it's been really refined. Like, there've been a lot of additions of this game that have really refined it down, and given it some real sort of like a pedigree. I think that's how you get to this sort of like a nicely tailored core mechanic book that then you can add all these overlays to change the theme in the genre. Atronax says, I can't believe they have the young ones. They do. They have young ones finishers. They have, I think there's What We Do in the Shadows miniatures. They have everything. Crooked Dice is incredible. I'm almost afraid of doing this episode because they have so much to show everybody. There's so much there. Kevin Mitchell says, I picked up Pulp Alley a while back instead of 7TV. I think I'll be adding 7TV to my 80s collection next, even just the miniatures. Matt Bear says, it's so much fun going through the 7TV miniatures and trying to figure out where each one comes from. Ryan W says, exactly. I'm doing that right now. There's so many good ones. Oh man, I should make sure that the Crooked Dice guys know that I sent you. Jim Kerman says, a patron arrives right on time. Fantastic that he's here. And then Chris Gibson says, I remember that Phil Collins was very proud of himself for getting his character to say wanker when he was on Miami Vice. Jim Kerman says, going from fantasy to sci-fi to modern settings requires a whole new set of terrain, which I dove into when I was doing Majestic 13 from Starling Badger. Black Site has great stuff. Yeah, I think this is the perfect rule set if I ever want to do, like, if me and Jay want to do The Thing, or if we want to do, what was the other one I was thinking of? If we want to bring back our X-Files thing, like, I love doing our Black Site Studio X-Files series that we did where we were doing Don't Look Back. But 7TV really is like, if I wanted to fight a Fluke Man, we definitely could find a Fluke Man miniature. I'm pretty sure there's just X-Files miniatures from Crooked Dice as well. So if I want to bring back Skulder and Mully, it is the rules for doing that, I think, for sure. Matt Bear says, suddenly I need Moonraker henchmen. And then Matt Bear says, I just placed an order. That's fantastic. Yeah, you can get, I will say that of all of the miniature ranges that you can get lost in, I do think that the 7TV Crooked Dice miniature range is one that you could, like, that's a deep sea diver ghost. Like, that is absolutely a Scooby-Doo villain. There is almost no way to not get lost in this. I need to see now if, oh no, I did want to see this one because I'm pretty sure there's Midsummer miniatures in the folk horror section, because there's a big folk horror section as well. Oh, maybe not. Maybe they haven't gotten that far yet. Because if I can get a Danny Midsummer miniature, I will absolutely paint up one of those. But there's tons of genres, tons of weird shit. And yeah, I can't be, did the Paranormal Exterminators also have, was there an X-Files section? Because I think there is an X-Files section in here. Because oh yeah, you can get you can get all of, I forgot there was multiple miniatures. You can get the characters. I'm pretty sure these are supposed to be from Salem's Lot. So some vampire hunters from Salem's Lot. Obviously, you can make your own Paranormal Exterminators as well, because there's a Dana from, there he is. There's Armada, Deadeye Hunter. Yep, there's Armada at a time. If Chins could kill, looking fantastic. The best named hero ever. Maybe they'll be in Law and Order under here, because like you got the Shadow. We've obviously got B.A. Baracus. There's a ton of variety of like TV show characters in here. Maverick Cops. Attack Dogs. Yeah, I'm not sure if they've got Mulder and Scully miniatures, but I thought they did. I mean, I already have my own Mulder and Scully miniatures, but I could definitely own more. I need an Agent Pendrell miniature, the saddest X-Files character, Agent Pendrell, who keeps asking Scully out and then dies and gets rejected and dies. Oh, they got a Murtaugh Riggs set though. Yep. Some people were too old for this shit. We got a Murtaugh Riggs miniature. We've obviously got a Miami Vice Michael Mann miniature right here. Yacht Rock Cops. Oh my God. Yeah. We could do this entire episode of just going through Crooked Dice and this miniature range, because this miniature range is fantastic, but we have to get on to our next game. So yeah, let's jump into our next game and talk about some Perilous Tales. This is this is Mike Hutchinson's game of, I guess it's firmly in the pulp. So you can reskin it. And I did actually reskin this to, when I played through it, that's what I painted my X-Files miniatures for. So you can thank Skulder and Mully are definitely a creation of Mike. It's available through Itch, and it's also available, once again, I picked it up through Wargames Vault. The links in the video description will be for Wargames Vault, because I like having all of my library in one place. It comes with counters, cards, and a zine, and is an A5 scale rulebook. There's print copies of it available as well, and I know that because Mike sent me one, but we're going to look at the digital one today. This is a significantly shorter rulebook. So total page count for this one is 48 pages. So if you're looking for something a little bit lighter than 7TV to get you started, Mike's game might be a little more, what's the word? A little more rules light if you want your model collection to just kind of like jump in. Uses D10s, has some generic rules for, we loaded off here. And what you would need is a small collection of appropriate miniatures, 5 heroes and 5 villains, a tape measure in inches, some D10s, a pack of standard playing cards, and a 24 by 24 inch board. So as I always do with these games, I try and pair up games where you would have a similar collection of miniatures and or like accessories, and they both use playing cards. They both have the same playing surface, and they would both generally use the same miniatures. So this kind of paired perfectly. Tokens and cards you can download as well. Miniatures, you can use as many as you want. There's tons of different big box miniatures. And of course, we just looked through Crooked Dice, whose miniatures would be perfect for this. Markers refer to various 30 mil diameter markers. You can use plastic or MDF tokens and bases. And then, a 0 on a D10 is treated as a 10, and this can result in misfortunes or critical skill checks, as we'll talk about later. Ranges from base to base. Line of sight is models can line of sight from any part of their base and do not have any kind of facing. When you randomly determine something, you might roll a D10 and have its point be a direction and its distance be the number that you are determining. Within X means between 2 points on something. Inside X means the entirety of something is inside that range. And X away would be something from the point of your miniature to the point of the thing. When things don't fit, if a non-hero model marker or token can be placed in a desired location for any reason, you slide it towards the villainous board edge by the minimum amount allowed for it to be placed. And then a horror check, because this is a pulp game. When a hero is required to make a horror check, make a skill check. If no successes are scored, the hero immediately takes a walk action directly away from the thing that scared it. If the model can't make a walk action because it's engaged, it becomes knocked down instead. So you can think of that as like the crawling away, like falling down and backing away thing. And then despair. Whenever a hero is killed, every hero within 8 in line of sight must immediately make a horror check because something terrible has happened to their friend. And then the villains, you get the masters and the minions. So the master is the big bad, the werewolf, the Dracula, the Serpentor, the Zool, depending upon the pulp story that you're trying to take. And then you need a certain amount of small minions, things like wolves, cultists, fishmen, zombies, right? A number of awful things. So when I did mine, I think my bad guy was Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then his minions were like two like little Strigoi and two bat swarms, and that was the bad guys that I made for him. And then it was Agent Skulder and Mully were my heroes. We'll talk about that for a second. We had the leader, which was Skulder. Mully was a teammate, and then there was 3 SWAT guys that were part of the paranormal defense agency that Skulder had put together. Creating your party. Depending on the number of players fighting the master and minions, so 1 to 4 players, because this is a multiplayer game. Mike really likes making party games. A single player would take a leader and 4 teammates. A 2-player game would be a leader and a teammate each. You have 4 models. 3 players, you get 2 teammates each, and then 4, a player takes a leader each. So depending upon how many people you have playing, your party size and your power will slightly change. And then you buy them traits. In Perilous Tales, our heroes are ordinary men and women standing back to back to fight things. Everybody gets a single trait. A leader gets 2 traits, and those will allow you to not have sort of like the same model over and over again. They differentiate you, but you can't have the same one on the same team. So, for instance, if you want to be Skulder, you take Crazed because he's out of his fucking mind. This model automatically passes any horror checks because he just wants to punch a ghost so bad. And then, for instance, if you are maybe Mully, or Scully in this case, you can be a professional. You may reroll 1s during skill checks because she's the only person that's actually any good at being a cop in that whole show. Or Lucky would be a good one for Mulder as well. Once per round, this model may ignore any one effect other than suffering wounds that would suffer directly from a villain, threat marker, or threat check effect. Because Mulder occasionally is the world's luckiest detective. He'll drop his gun and lose it, and then somehow still survive. And that's it. That's all you have to do for your core creation rules, which I think is fantastic. It's a nice, simple creation step. Your stat line for your hero is going to be 12 wounds, a skill of 4, and can take 3 actions per turn. A teammate is 8 wounds, a skill of 2, and 2 action points. So it's a 3-stat game, and then you differentiate your models by giving them a cool trait. Skill checks. In Perilous Tales, many actions require a skill test. To make a skill test, roll a d10 of 1 color, add as the difficulty dice, and then roll a d10 as the skill dice, as many of them as you have the skill, to try and check it. Any skill dice that equals or beats the difficulty dice is a success. So if you roll your difficulty dice, let's say it's a red d10, and then you roll 3 black d10, which are your skill check, or let's say 4 because it's the hero, you're doing a dice pool basically, but you have a random difficulty meter every single time. So the bigger the pool, the more likely you're going to get to beat the dice that's there. During a skill check, any skill dice that rolls a natural 10 is a crit success and counts as 2 successes instead of 1. And remember, even if the difficulty was 10, a 10 would still equal or beat it. So you would get that success. And a fumble. During a skill check, any skill dice roll of a 1 is a fumble and may never count as a success regardless of the difficulty. So even if the difficulty dice is a 1 will still fail. And then misfortune. During a skill check, if the difficulty dice rolls a natural 10, then the model suffered a misfortune and the skill check automatically fails regardless of the values of the skill dice. You can't even crit against it. And then minimum difficulty. Some skill checks have minimum difficulty. This is the minimum roll, even if the roll ends up being lower. So that means that if it was a minimum difficulty of 6, if the dice roll for the difficulty dice scores below a 6, it's still considered a 6, but it could be higher based upon what you roll. Advantage. If you have advantage, roll 2 difficulty dice and discard the highest. If it's disadvantage, roll 2 difficulty dice and discard the lowest before checking for success. If a skill check has both, ignore both. You can use advantage to discard a misfortune if you roll that 10. And then support. A model can lend support to friendly models. Attack actions. When a model makes an attack action that targets an engaged a model they're engaged with, if there's more friendly models than enemy models, you get an advantage. And then non-attack actions. When a model makes a skill check as part of a non-attack action, if there's any other friends within 1, they can help out. So let's say you're trying to like hotwire a car, get another friend within 1, they can help you do it, right? Like, turn it over, you know what I mean? Like, hold these 2 wires while I do this. And then attack actions. A model may attack an enemy model that has line of sight to and is in range of the attack action being listed. When a model makes an attack, it must make a skill check. Each success causes a wound to the enemy, and when a model has suffered wounds equal to its wound stat, that model is killed or removed from play. If you're within an inch of somebody, you're engaged. If you have a knockdown tone, you're knocked down. If you get pushed back, you move directly away from the thing pushing you, stopping if you hit blocking terrain or another model. General terrain traits, rules for the board edges, and then we go to playing a game. All right, so it's in 3 phases. We've assembled our crew now, given them some cool traits. We know how many players we're having. This is the core mechanics for the game. So round structure, you play it over a series of rounds. In each round, you activate your heroes until they've all activated or they are interrupted by the ambush. You make a threat check when you activate all your villains. Once the villain's been activated, the round ends and a new round begins. So the master might not be arrived at the beginning. And then last ditch, once per game, you can reroll 1 skill check or attack made by a hero. You only get to use this once, so you have to save it. During the hero phase, you activate each model in turn in an order of your choosing. You must complete the activation of 1 model before you do another one. So remember, your teammates have 2 actions, your hero has 3. When hero is activated, it gains its action points equal to its action stat, and then these are spent. And then threat check, after activating your heroes, make a threat check and compare the number of successes to the threat table to see if the unseen threats perform any actions. So stuff starts off the table. So if you think of it as a scene in a TV show, you arrive in the abandoned house and the door is kicked in and you don't know what's happening. The heroes start approaching the house or approaching the scene. Then you make threat checks to see if the stuff you can't see, the threat markers moving around, start to creep towards you. And then finally, during the villain phase, you must activate each villain, always activating the villain that has yet to activate that's closest to the heroic board edge, that goes closest to furthest, until every villain's been activated at least once. At the end of the game, if an end game condition is met on an objective, all the party or dead have left the board, or the threat level becomes 10, then the game automatically ends. And then how did you win? If the leader's alive at the end of the game, you get a point. All team members are alive for an extra point. If the whole party's dead, you get -1 points. And your final rank is your score. So how'd you do? A, B, C through F. If it's an F, it's a failure. If it's a D, it's a near thing. It's not your past episode. A C, it's adequate. So there's a layer of success because it's you against the game. You're trying to get the highest rating possible. And we've got all our actions here. If an action is a skill check, obviously you have to use your skill, and you can do things like walk up to 4 inches, and they're all generic, so there's no other stats for movement and stuff like that, right? Make a hand-to-hand attack, make a shooting attack, escape from combat, focus to add dice to your next test, help up so you can cancel a knockdown on somebody, interact with something for an objective, talk to somebody, or even taunt the enemy. Mulder's good at that, actually, because of his oppositional defiance disorder. And then leader-only action, so only the leader can do this. Keep your eyes peeled. It's like holding an action. Call over, move somebody else. And then pep talk, give somebody advantage for the next skill check. Specialist actions can be based upon what you have. So spot hidden, do a first aid, dynamite attack if you have the medic trait. Or sorry, if you have the demolition expert trait. Or incendiary attack if you're a pyromaniac. And then we have our threat markers. So at the end of any heroic action, if any hero is within 6 of 1 or more threat markers, or when a threat marker is moved within 6 of a hero, reveal all threat markers so you spot them finally. And then you flip them over. Reveal a villain. If the revealed threat marker number indicates a master or minion, commonly those numbered 1 to 5, spawn the indicated villain within 1 inch of the revealer and as close to the threat marker that revealed it as possible. When you reveal a master for the first time, add +1 to the threat level. Because remember, if the threat level gets to 10, then the game ends. And then revealing a peril. Before the game, shuffle all the cards of 1 suit from a deck of standard playing cards to form the peril deck. If the revealed peril threat marker number indicates a peril, commonly those numbered 6 to 8, flip a card from the peril deck, read the text of the indicated peril, and resolve it. So every episode of Perilous Tales will have who the master is, who the minions are, some of the perils that are available there, and this is the generic rules for activating all that stuff. So later on, you're going to get to the individual episodes and what kind of bad guys they are. Many threats affect the revealer, so who saw the token. And then spawning villains. When asked to spawn a new master or minion, take the appropriate monster miniature from your collection and put them in play. So for example, if you're using the Vampire Count villain and you're asked to spawn a random miniature, you'd randomize between 2 Thrall results and 2 Bat Swarm results. And once you have the max amount of them in play, you're done. And so I had done the Vampire Count for my episode. And then threat checks. After activating the heroes in your hero phase, you make a threat check to see what malevolent machinations move to menace your heroes. That's a lot of M's in there, Mike. You can tell Mike likes M's. Threat level always starts at 1. When you reveal a master, it goes up by 1 automatically. If you kill a master, it goes down by 2. And then threat check. The threat check is a skill check with a skill equal to the current threat level and a minimum difficulty equal to the number of heroes in play. The threat check always has advantage. Count the number of successes and compare it to the number value of the threat check. Result below. If 1 to 2 successes, The News Titans, no successes, but add 1 to the threat level. 3 to 4, Crawling Chaos. Each player must a horror check, and then the News Titans. And then 5 to 6 from the Shadows. Each master removes 3 wounds. They heal, and then 7 plus, the trap is sprung. Move 2 unrevealed threat markers furthest from any hero, 7 inches towards the target hero. So they're basically like how much is the behind the scenes action of the bad guy the heroes are hunting taking effect, and it will start to like escalate the longer the game goes on and eventually end the game. And then the village phase, we have our AI behaviors basically for reactions and actions for the minions and monsters. So I have a little chart here. So each of the villains will have a trait. If they're aggressive, they're a lurker or a pack hunter. Say what they'll do. And then we have how to episode setup. So how to like basically put together the scene that you're going to play. Establish the villains, determine your perils, determine your objective, and select your party. Set up the table in the play area, set up the threat markers, set up your objective markers, and deploy your party. So we have 10 different episodes here in the first Perilous Tales zine. The Thing in the Ice, the Thing. The Watleys, which I think is kind of a Dunwich horror. The Mad Scientist, the Vampire Count, the Ghast, the Demon Butcher, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Gargoyles, and the Swamp Thing. And each of them will have their own stats. There are generic deployments for where you put your threat markers that you'll determine and randomize, and they might be set up by the theme. And then you get your party archetype. And you can select one of these to give yourself additional advantages for who they are, showing up. There is some to be continued. So this is the how do you gain XP and how do you spend it. So some basic campaign rules. Can play with them here. And then we have our actual bad guys. So for the Thing in the Ice, the thing that was Jenkins, Master Aggressive, 12 wounds, skill 6, or the thing that was a Sled Dog is 2 to 5 for your different bad guys. For the Watleys, we got Old Man Watley, the Dunwich Horror, Lavinia Watley, Wilbur Watley, and a Cultist. For the Mad Scientist, a Mad Scientist, the Monster, the Lab Assistant, the Botch Creation. So we have our Frankenstein monster. The Vampire Count with Thralls and Bat Swarms. That's one I played through when I did the Let's Play for this. The Ghast, an evil sort of like ghost story. The Demon Butcher, exactly what it sounds like. A werewolf. A mummy. And on and on. So each of these has its own sort of like little storyline. And I like that it's actually Imhotep too for the mummy. And then we have different objectives that you can have for each game. So these are the things you're trying to do. Like kill the master, hunt the fiends, stop a ritual, rescue a prisoner, recover equipment. And then the perils could be what the environmental effects are, right? So 1,000 cuts, disaster strikes, mired. This peril remains in play when a model within 6 of this peril declares a walk action. They must pass a skill check or move at half speed during their action. It's basically like, does it start raining in Jurassic Park while, what's his name? While Newman from Seinfeld is trying to get away. And then the Horde spawn D3 minions. Like, extra minions show up. And that's it. So a nice, tight, concise game. Once again, available from DriveThruRPG, or you can get it off of the links to Itch.io on Planet Smasher as well. And that's it. Let's check in with the chat. Now, there is a Let's Play for this game that you can watch. I think I did it during the pandemic. Mike first started scratching at this game. And it was just a free, he had a Word doc basically that we downloaded. And I that's when I did Skelder and Molly that we put together for trying it out. As I kind of did some live play testing. So you can still find the Let's Play on GMG. It'll be in the indie playlists, I believe, or just Google Guerrilla Miniature Games. Maybe I'll put it in the description actually when this goes live. But yeah, we've played through it. So if you want to watch, and the game is relatively unchanged. So it's tightened up and finished and obviously super well laid out. But you can see some live gameplay action of me playing through it as well. And I believe there's some cool accessories for it from Schooner Labs. My boy Mark out in Nova Scotia did some MDF accessories for it too, if you want to grab that. So let's check in with the chat and then we are done. That would be another excellent episode of High Adventure from the Indie Hour. So everyone's still looking at Crooked Dice Miniatures. Matt Olson says your Batman RPG character needs to be 3D. Oh, that's right, from RPJ. That's funny. I could do Accidental Batman. I could do a 7TV of Accidental Batman and Accidental Alfred. That'd be really funny. That's actually 17V fantasy for Accidental Batman would be really funny. Alfred. We could do all the Alfred shit with, what was it, Coppersworth instead of Pennyworth he did? Yeah, RPG would be fun. Matt Olson said, weird shit is my answer whenever everyone asks me what my minis are like. And Gizmo Mathboy says, I'm having way too much fun with these miniatures. Kevin Mitchell says, I love the V for Vendetta, or so the V in Battlestar Galactica miniatures. And Curlo Corvo says, I love Perilous Tales. Perfect. Matt Bear is off. Gene Dean says, sweet, I thought I was going to miss this. No, you didn't. You're here. And then Malev says, I got Perilous told. Gene Dean says, I would love to see a Dr. Phosphorus dance number. And then Ken Mitchell says, it's a fun system. I have the rules and a friend was cracking Pulp 30's campaign. We'd have another go at it. And Gene Dean said, where would a good place to find minis for these games be? Go check out Crooked Dice or Black Site Studio. They are all fantastic designers for this kind of stuff. But even older producers like Foundry, Wargames Foundry has a lot of great old cobblestone miniatures on there. You can find all kinds of really cool stuff. Alfred, why do we have so many abandoned wells on our property? Atragon X just said, he just wants to hear my Batman voice. Everyone loves my Batman voice. I keep falling into places. So yeah, we're done. So this was a lot of fun, guys. Thanks so much for picking 7TV. I love going down memory lane, and of course I just love looking at miniatures. So this was a fun one, and I hope for those of you who've never encountered something like this before, when this goes live on YouTube, this opens up a whole new world of adventure. We will be back next week with another one of these. We'll be recording live. The poll is going to go up usually like Thursday or Friday for people to check it out. And we'll have this episode while it's airing. We'll be recording whatever gets picked by the patrons. We had some ideas in the chat for different genres that we're going to pick up as recommendations too. So if you want to get your vote in and decide on what's next on the Indie Hour, you can do that as a patron on GMG. So thanks for watching. Thanks for my patrons for picking this. Of course, Mike and the designers over at 7TV for making great games. And we'll see you for another Indie Hour next week. Bye, everybody.